there is a clear relationship between climate change and the water crisis in Nairobi.
We have actually witnessed diminished rainfall.
There is a huge drop in water levels of rivers and dams all over the country.
Tumekaa miaka mingi na hiyo shida maji.
Its impact on child mortality rates is devastating.
Wakasema tutatumia hiyo ya chumvi. Kama mimi upande wangu nilikataa.
When there is a scarcity of commodity, cartels must arise. Vandalism has been a big problem in the informal settlements.
Having water as a resource is actually a fundamental human right issue.
The city of Nairobi has an estimated population of over 4 million inhabitants. The rapid population growth does not look like it will stop anytime soon. As the population keeps growing, so does the demand for water. Provision of adequate water is one of the essential services that is required for the efficient running of any city. According to Kenya Forest Service, climate has adverse effects on water resources in Kenya. It impacts the pattern of rainfall and the amount received, and this affects water sources like rivers, dams, which in turn reduces the availability of water supply in the city of Nairobi. In the 1930s, most of the Kenya forests were gazetted by the government.
When look at, and I'll really look at even within the areas that we have, that's Nairobi and surrounding counties, those years, many years, Nairobi basically used to be fully forested areas. Remember, they used to call it a place of cold waters, meaning that there was a lot of water flowing through Nairobi. There used to be a lot of very many river systems that used to flow, for example, through Nairobi city. But over time, because of the issues of development, construction, we have actually had quite a tremendous reduction in terms of the areas that were at recover.
The forest cover of the city of Nairobi then was more than 7,000 acres. However, today the forest cover is down to only 1,200 acres. This is due to the demand for housing brought about by explosion of population growth and the rural to urban migration. The demand for trees has led to the clearing of once forested areas to accommodate the new growing urban population. With increase in population comes increase in demand for water. Nairobi Water and Sewage Boss Mr. Nahashon Muguna explains.
The demand is around 850,000 cubic meters per day. And this demand grows at 20,000 cubic meters every year. The population of the town grows by 3.8 to 4%.
In order to create space to accommodate the growing population and industries, a lot of forest cover has been cleared. This has not been without significant consequences. Moreover, there is a clear relationship between climate change and the water crisis in Nairobi.
There's less water for use by communities, especially the ones who are in residential areas where they require a lot of water, and that water has to be generated from our catchment areas.
It is important to note that climate change is having a negative impact on the management of forests and forest areas.
We have actually witnessed diminished rainfall. It has become very erratic, and that obviously has an impact on the issues of forest acting as catchment areas for issues of water conservation.
The forests are essential water catchment areas for the city, and due to irregular rainfall, there is a huge drop in water levels of rivers and dams all over the country.
First of all, let us appreciate that climate change has had a tremendous impact, especially in terms of the management of forests and forest areas.
How then does climate change have an impact on water sources in Kenya?
Climate change has everything to do with water sources in Nairobi. As I mentioned, upstream or within our water towers. The water towers really do supply water to the city. A city of close to 5 million people. If you look at the demand for water in Nairobi, just upwards of 500,000 cubic meters. The supply close to about more than 800,000 cubic meters of water. And so the deficit is close to 300,000 cubic meters of water.
Nairobi's main water source is the Ndakaini Dam, which lies about 50 kilometers, that is 30 miles north of the capital. According to the Nairobi Water and Sewerage Board, the dam supplies about 85% of the 500 million liters of water the city uses each day.
We're only able to meet 32% of the demand at any particular time. So there is a lot of micro-rationing within those areas.
Sasumua Dam in Nyandarua County, which supplies some of the water in Nairobi, is around 525,000 cubic meters against the demand of 850,000 cubic meters per day. It is way below the amount Nairobi Water and Sewerage Company needs to meet the water demand of the city. Again, when it rains, the river gets a lot of silt due to deforestation, as forested areas have been cleared and people have settled all the way to the river banks.
The amount of water we produce from our four sources, that's Gikuyu, Oiro, Sasumua, and then Thika, Ngedu, Gigiri system, is around 525,000 cubic meters against a demand of 850,000 cubic meters per day, which is way above what we need to supply to the city, what we can be able to produce, or the installed production capacity from our installations.
The overall effect is that there is less water for communities to use, especially the ones in residential areas where a lot of water is required, and that water is generated from forest catchment areas. Lack of access to water, good sanitation and hygiene, otherwise known collectively as WASH, can have deeply felt socio-economic impact on any given demography. This impact is especially felt by people who live in informal settlements, as mentioned by a resident.
Mimi ni mkaaji wa Kayole Matopeni, na nikiwa mkaaji wa Kayole Matopeni kuna shida kwa upande wa maji.
Water is a necessary commodity useful in every part of the society, from homes to schools, hospitals to industries, for livestock, wildlife and even plants. Climate change has greatly impacted the availability of water, and this has left many parts of the country experiencing severe drought. It has not made it any easier for the residents of Nairobi. For a regular Nairobi city resident like Lynette, this reality has changed the scope of her day-to-day life.
Mimi ni mkaji wa Yani, line R. Situation ya maji hapa Yani iko very poor. Cause tunanunua maji per day, niseme siku yenye ufui unaweza nunua maji ya 200, na siku yenye unafua unanunua maji karibu ya 600. Kuna vijana wameform group huku, wako na mkokoteni, wengine wako na wheelbarrow. Sasa ukitaka maji, juu kuna contacts zao, unamcall anakuletea maji, so long as tu mwambie ni kiasi gani ya maji unataka.
On the other side of town, Jennifer, who is an informal settlement resident, also narrates how she grapples with inadequate access to fresh water, which is also as a result of the impact of climate change.
Shida ya maji haijaanza jana wala juzi, tumekaa miaka mingi na hiyo shida ya maji. Sababu nakumbuka mradi ilikuja kuingia hapa kwetu, ile ilikuwa inashughulikia sewage na water. Walikuja wakakuwa wanataka kutupatia maji, na wakitaka kutupatia maji walipata tukitumia maji ya bowl. Ile ilikuwa imepeanwa ni kama ya kusaidia area hii, na kutoka watu hidi watatupatia maji mpaka wale hatujaiona maji.
Indeed, access to safe water and sanitation are basic human rights, as recognized in 2010 by the United Nations General Assembly.
Na hizo pipe zenye waliweka zilifika kiwango ikakuwa sasa ndio shida zaidi, sababu walikuja wakatuconnectia maji ya chumvi kwa kila plot, na wakarudi wakasema maji safi tutakuwa tunapata mara moja kwa wiki, na imefika kiwango hata hiyo mara moja kwa wiki haikuji.
On 28 July 2010, the UN adopted a historical resolution recognizing the right to safe and clean drinking water and sanitation as a human right that is essential for the full enjoyment of life and all human rights.
Mimi wakati walituwekea maji wakasema tutatumia hiyo ya chumvi. Kama mimi upande wangu nilikataa. Nikakuwa sasa nikitaka maji naendea mbali sana. Maji ile nataka. Kama ni safi, naenda wakati nasikia kuna maji imepatikana area ya Kayole, naenda kuchota huko, nabeba na mkokoteni mpaka hapa kwangu. Kama hiyo maji safi imekosa hata hiyo area ya Kayole, na kama huku kwetu haijakuja, mimi nategemea borehole. Naweza lipa mtu tuende na yeye na mkokoteni tuchotelee ndio niweze kupata maji.
Water scarcity in the city has led to an increase in the number of water vendors and bowsers. Also, around informal settlement areas, this has given rise to water cartels who interfere with Nairobi Water Company's supply pipes.
Vandalism has been a big problem in the informal settlement of Nairobi. That's Kibera, Nakuru, Mathare. When there is a scarcity of commodity, cartels must arise. The solution to solve those kind of problems is to provide the water in adequate quantities in those areas. But that's how you can be able to address issues of vandalism of water infrastructures in the informal settlement and in any other area.
According to the United Nations, 2 billion people lack access to safely managed drinking water services, and 3.6 billion people lack safely managed sanitation services. A person without access to improved drinking water from a protected borehole or piped water is forced to rely on sources such as surface water, unprotected and possibly contaminated wells, or vendors selling waters of unverifiable provenance and quality, as narrated by Jennifer.
Kuna maji ilikuwa imetafutiwa njia ya kuingia mahali hapa tunakaa, na vijana walikuwa wameconnect wakati wa Mheshimiwa Waititu. Tulipata maji kutoka junction na pipe tukanunua, mheshimiwa akatuongezea zingine, tukawekewa maji, kila plot ilikuwa na maji na tulikuwa tunaona maji safi.
Jennifer mentions that the residents had access to clean water before.
Sasa kutoka borehole chimbwe tulishindwa pahali hiyo maji ilienda, na wale watu walikuja kuchimba siwa na pipe za maji wenye walikuwa nakuja kuweka, waliweza kutoa hizo pipe zilikuwa tumenunuliwa na Mheshimiwa Waititu, wakazitoa wakatoanisha, ikakuwa sasa hiyo maji hatupati, na wakaweka pipe zao zingine.
If you look at that deficit, it means half of the supply is lost through illegal connections. It's lost through non-revenue water, through leakages, and so if you look at the efficiency level of how we get water supply within the city, then it really points you to what happens upstream or within our water towers, our catchment areas, if so to speak. So if you take care of our ecosystems upstream, then it means we'll have a quality supply of water within the city. We'll have a reliable supply of water, which has been lacking in most of the estates, especially in the informal settlements where close to half of the population live.
According to UNICEF, unsafe hygiene practices are widespread, compounding the effects on people's health. Its impact on child mortality rates is devastating, with more than 700 children under 5 who die every day from diarrhea due to poor sanitation, poor hygiene, or unsafe drinking water. According to Kenya Forest Service, climate change has adverse effects on water resources in Kenya. It impacts the pattern of rainfall and the amount received, and this affects water sources like rivers, dams, which in turn reduces the availability of water supply in the city of Nairobi.
The government needs to set up really robust policies to make sure that water is available to communities and to the people, especially in the informal settlements where the water demand is quite high. And so water availability, having water as a resource is actually a fundamental human right issue. So if you look at the impacts of climate change, then it brings about the whole conversation about climate justice and how do we ensure that these vulnerable populations really have water.
In the quest to augment the water deficit that the city of Nairobi faces, especially in informal settlements, there are projects that have been put in place to look into solving water issues. One such place is Kibera Town Center. Meet Byros Hainga, the Technical Services Director of Human Needs Projects.
We started by setting up the borehole, of course, basically to extract water, and the need was to get into a very rich aquifer. So we got into a very good aquifer where we have a regeneration capacity of 20,000 litres per hour. So that necessitated us to also pretty much now assure quality.
This project aims to address the problem of lack of clean water for consumption in the informal settlement area. The NGO has set up mechanisms to ensure that the residents receive water that is fit for human consumption.
Every single drop of water within this building does not go to waste. So we recycle our water through the wastewater management system. So again, water from our washrooms, the laundry, the kitchen would basically flow into one system that has several components that ensure that it's recycled.
Meet Mary Akenyi, who is one of the beneficiaries.
Kwanza nianze kuishi huku, tulikuwa sana na shida ya maji. Kwa wakati tulikuwa na shida ya maji, hata tulikuwa tunatumia maji za kisima. Lakini dakika ya mwisho iko watu vile nadhani walipata ujanja kuleta maji huku. Sasa at least waliungana, wakavuruta mamfereji zikakuwa mingi, hiyo maji ikatusaidia. Ndio sasa tunatumia sana wengi wanatumia hiyo kwa upande ya kuoga. Sasa tuseme hapo ndo tulipata maji, juu maji ilikuwa inatusumbua, tulikuwa tunatoa maji mbali sana. Mtungi moja hapa hivi tunanunua 20 bob kwa mfano. Pale KTC tutaenda tuna 10 bob peke yake uoge na utoke kama uko sawa na hiyo shilingi yako 10.
Our model as Kibera Town Center, the vision itself is that we are able to replicate these centers in other parts of the informal settlements, other parts of Kibera, other parts of the slum area, Mukuru, Madare, and any other within also the western region and the coast region. And how it's designed basically with the energy and self-sufficient water systems, you can actually plug it and just, if it was possible, you could just plug it up and put it somewhere else and it will still function. So the off-grid setup is actually one thing that is very unique, where we are doing our own energy and water systems and pretty much sustain everything that is within the building just by what we have, and no external input from whatever infrastructure. Quest of keeping it green and going green, we power all our systems with a 45 kilowatt solar system, and we also have photothermal panels for the hot shower needs, and for the generator we use biodiesel to basically run it. So in entirety we basically an off-grid setup both for our wastewater systems and energy systems, and we embrace a lot, and we are champions for the green movement globally.
Despite the challenges the city is currently facing regarding water shortages, Nairobi Water and Sewerage Company already has a plan in place which, when completed, would mitigate the water issues. Nairobi Water and Sewerage Company has plans to increase water output capacity in order to meet the growing demand for the precious commodity.
Now, for Nairobi to be self-sufficient with water, we need additional dams. And there are plans to do those dams. There is a dam which is already going on, called Kalimeno, which is supposed to produce around 70,000 cubic meters per day.
When all the dams mentioned have been completed, Nairobi will have enough water sufficient to last the city up to 2035. These projects should be completed by 2028 as per the master plan.
So we expect by December we'll have an additional 23,000 cubic meters of water to the city from Kalimeno Dam. Then we have Ruiru 2, which is also supposed to be commencing construction anytime this year. The contract has been awarded. It's an ECP, engineering and design and financing system.
We have to look at the aspect of climate change and how it affects on forestry and environment holistically, and then bring in all the stakeholders will have to come and invest in it. That is not just a job of the government, but every person will have to take that responsibility. And because they have realized that forests are very critical, green spaces are very critical, and we have to ensure that everyone plays a role. Because if we can do that, then if the 50 million or so Kenyans can plant at least 10 trees each, you can imagine how tremendous a change that we can be able to make in this country.
The critical keys in winning the war against water shortage in the city of Nairobi include: 1. Examining all the aspects of climate change and its effect on forestry and development. 2. Bringing stakeholders, both government and private sectors, to the table for shared responsibilities. 3. All this should be done while bearing in mind that Forest Conservancy is a major player in the fight on the effects of climate change. The climate is getting drier as greenhouse gas rise. As temperature rises, we are seeing more evaporation. It is clear that we have to do something, if not for ourselves, for the generations to come.